Hello, this is Brian from Comprehensive MSP, and today I want to talk about scripting, hopefully make it a lot easier for you. What I want to do is take a little bit of the mystery out of it, provide a template that helps a lot. You get Automate and you're like, it's this wonderful blank slate. I can do all of these amazing things with it, but I have no idea how. I don't really have a good start. Maybe you watch some of the instruction videos on Labtech University and you're like, well, this is great, but I still have no idea what's going on. And what I'm hoping to do is sort of rectify some of that and give away this template that I've made that I use for pretty much every script that I put together now, because it's thorough, it follows up, it makes sure that the thing that it did is done, and then in addition to that gives you pretty detailed reporting on failure, because I'm sure you've had that experience where you'll see a ticket in Labtech and you're like, it mentions a failure. Clearly a script did this, but it's not really clear, where it failed or which script it is. You're like, well, what is this? Where's this even coming from? So this really just sort of solves all of those problems. And I'm just sort of giving it away. I do this professionally, but I thought I would just sort of in good nature give this away. I'll maybe throw like a donate button on the blog if you so feel inclined, but if not, then that's fine too. It's free for everybody to use. So the first thing you're going to want to do is download the template, which there is a link on this blog post that will direct you to it. And after you download it, you're going to see this zipped up script creation template. So go ahead and extract that. And here you have it. So to get that into Labtech, just go to Tools, Import, XML Expansion, and go to Find the File, double-click it, click Yes, and after it imports, it is going to show up under a folder in your script tree called Comprehensive MSP, and it's called Script Creation Template. Go ahead and open it up. And what I recommend doing here is taking it, highlight the whole thing by holding down Shift and going to the end and clicking, right click, go to Scriptlets and say Create, name it Script Template or whatever works for you. Click OK. Okay, now that that's done, you can go and create any new script. Just right click, go to Scriptlets, choose Script Template, and Insert. And now you've got this whole template. What I like to do is, as we work through it, I like to indent 4 or 5 times because it helps separate the different functions and that sort of thing. You'll see what I mean as we work through it. So let's work through this thing. The idea is for this to just be super easy, for it to check to see if this needs to happen, if it does need to happen, for it to do it, for it to verify along the way, make sure everything's cool, make sure that the things that you're trying to do are happening. So this template is actually a script to install Adobe Reader. That's what I've used. And we're just going to sort of update it to do the thing that we want to do. First thing we want to do is pre-check. In this case, so when you go to add, you've got a variety of options. You really want to look under the if section. So we want to say, okay, what will be true if this script is not necessary? In this case, if software installed, Adobe Acrobat Reader DC. If it's installed, 0, which means exit the script. So, and I already actually had it there. So in this case, because we're installing Adobe, we'll say, well, if Adobe's already there, then this isn't necessary. There are a variety of other if checks that you can do. You can check the registry. You can check to see if a file is there. You can say, is a certain patch there? Is a service running? You can even do a custom SQL check to just check for whatever you want. So really the idea is to say, okay, what is going to be true if this script is not necessary? Now, one thing I do recommend when you are doing a check like that is to make sure you have the latest info. So for instance, if I'm doing an if software installed, then if you go under the R's, there is the resend options. In this case, we'll resend software. That way, Labtech updates. It says, okay, got the latest software list. Is Adobe Acrobat Reader DC on that list? Yes, it is. Okay, well then exit the script. If it's not there, it'll move forward. Okay, next thing it does, it calls the identity function. This is very important because this is what is going to tell you in the failure ticket or email what script it was. What was the script supposed to do? So if we scroll down, you'll see that everything's labeled appropriately. Again, I like to indent as I go because it helps. So in this case, we just want to update this section, and if you're working on a new version of the script, then you can update this section. So, script name, install Adobe Reader, script description, it downloads and installs Adobe Reader. You can put really whatever you want here. So it's going to jump down to this section. It's going to set these variables of script name, script description, and script version. And then it's going to hop back up here, and it's going to begin the primary track of the script. So first thing it's going to do is it's going to reach out to function 1. It's a very linear thing here. It just goes function 1. Each function is self-contained, and I'll show you that in a second. And then function 2, function 3. If we decide later that we need more than 3 functions, all you got to do is just add, go to script call, function 4. And now we've got a 4th function, and I'll show you how to add the actual function here in a second. So let's go down here and look at function 1. This is just really, to do this, just sort of think like a technician, in order, what needs to happen. In this case, first thing we need to do is we need to download Adobe Reader. So you'll want to, usually what I do is I go through each function and I update the information about it first. So in the first line, you'll kind of change this, download Adobe Reader, it could be whatever this function is doing, run this, etc. Function name. This is important because there's one failure option here down at the bottom. And you'll see that in the log it's going to say function name has failed. Here's the function description. In the new ticket that it creates, script name has failed. Here's the function name. Your script name, script description, what was it doing? Function name, function description. So if you get a ticket or an email, it's going to tell you, here's the exact script. Here's what that script was supposed to do. Here's the function that the script was on, and here is exactly where it failed. So, it helps a lot to know exactly what's going on. That's why it is important to update these sections. So, function name, download Adobe Reader. Function description, it downloads the Adobe Reader installation files. A lot of times I'll even put the link, the address that it was, trying to download from. Now, I've built this into every function. You see where it's setting an active count, it's doing, the script math, it's what it's doing is it's setting a count of 0 and then it's adding 1 every time it passes through here, and this is what's going to make it to where if for whatever reason the thing that you just tried to do failed, it's actually going to hop back up to the beginning of that function and it's going to try again. So it's going to try everything a couple of times before it admits failure and then lets you know what's going on. So usually I'll throw a login, hey, creating folder structure, and then you'll say, well, create folder. There are many common things you're going to use in functions over and over again. Like here's a section where you create a folder, file upload, file download, file copy, execute script, which is where you'll say batch or PowerShell script. There's what you're going to find is that they're creating files, running scripts, and then also I use the get down to it here. Also use the shell, shell command section a lot. So those it's just very basic things that you would do, and you're just telling it to do these things. So log creating folder. Well, log create folder structure, and then this command create folder C automation reader. That's where we're putting it. Then another log, we're downloading Adobe Reader, download, and then we're going to say, hey, file download, here's where it is, here's where you need to save it to. Also, an interesting fact that a lot of people may not know, if you save things in your Labtech share, this doubles as an IIS virtual directory. So you see where we have transfer. To just get that from a URL, all you have to do is just add your Labtech server address /labtech/transfer, and now you get a direct window into whatever's in your transfer folder. So here's software, here's Adobe. I haven't actually put the file in there. I have it downloaded from somewhere else in this script, but you can. This is an easy way to download files from your Labtech server. Just put the installer here, and then use the sort of URL or URL. You would update obviously this part with whatever your Labtech server address is, and now you can just download straight off your Labtech server. I like to do it that way as opposed to the Labtech share because it tends to be faster. It tends to be more reliable at times, so I usually use URL, but you can do it differently if you want. Get out of here. Okay, so we want to do our function. In this case, we're creating a folder structure and we're downloading a file. And once you've done the actual function, you want to say, okay, how can I verify that that thing that was just done worked? In this case, if it worked, there's going to be a file there. So we can say if file check, here's the file path, and if it doesn't exist, go to function 1 begin, which is right here. So it's going to try again. And if it gets to a point where the count equals 3, it's going to jump to line 62, which is go to failure 1, which is, hey, create the ticket, tell us exactly where you failed, what the problem is, and we're going to know exactly what's going on. When you're building scripts, expect this to happen a few times. I mean, you usually have to test it and try a few times before it actually works out, but this makes it a lot easier to figure out what's going on. So one thing to do is as you edit and add things to this section, once you're done, you always want to, where it says if active count equal 3, then jump to line 62. If I add something here, then it's still going to say line 62, but now because there's more lines, it's going to be actually, suppose I add a thing here, blah, blah, blah. You see that now it's saying jump to line 62, but line 62 is actually return from call. So if you do that, you always want to make sure it's landing on this go to failure. So in this case, all I would do is I would just add 1 number to this. Instead of jumping 6 steps, jump to 7. Now we're going to line 63 instead, failure 1. Always important to do that, otherwise you might create a loop where it's just over and over again trying to do the thing, or it's failing but it actually went ahead and returned. So it's very important with each function to kind of spot check it and say, do I have all my names right? Is this going to the right place if it's tried too many times? Does my function look good? What can I do to test to make sure that the function worked? If you added a registry key in a function, then do an if registry check. If you've installed a piece of software, which we'll look at in function 2 here, then resend software and say if software installed. Just sort of think, okay, what is going to be true after this function happens, and see if it's true. If it's not, then it's going to try again, and if it's still not, it's going to fail. It's going to tell you what's up. So provided function 1 went okay, it's going to jump back up here and it's going to go to function 2. Well, let's look at function 2. Same thing. You just name, update all the names, update all the info. In this case, we're running installer. It's running the Adobe installer. Same thing with the math. It's it's doing a count so it can try a couple of times. In this case, log installing Adobe Reader. It's just a shell command. We've downloaded the file earlier. We made sure it was there. Now we're going to run it with the appropriate switches. And then after it's done, we're going to resend software, and we're going to say, if software is installed, then go on and jump to line 83, because that's what that's the thing we're checking for. Is that if it's so the if checks can go one of two ways. We can say if this is here, or if it's not here. So up here we used if it's not. We said if file check. If it's not there, then we want to go back up to function 1 begin. In this case, we're saying if software installed. So if it is there, well, we want to go to return from call because we're done. Otherwise, go to function 2 begin. So if everything went well there, then it just jumps right back up to function 2, and then it goes to function 3. In this case, function 3 is doing a little housekeeping on what we just did. So, same thing, cleaning up, delete this folder, then, we'll say, in this case, we're checking for failure. You can check for success or failure. So we're going to say if this reader.exe file exists, well, then obviously something went wrong. So we're going to go back up to function 3 begin. We're going to try again. If otherwise, go to return from call. It jumps right back up to function 3, or to the script track. This we'll ignore because we added that just a second ago. So then there's, I usually like to add a log and say, hey, that thing was successful. And then if you want, you can send an email right here. I usually by default have that there of sending an email to myself to say, hey, this script name has succeeded. It gives me metrics on, kind of what has and has not succeeded. You can decide whether or not you want that. So another thing I typically like to do is, or what I recommend, is take a whole function section and do the same thing we did with scriptlets. Create just a generic function. Spell it right if you want. Cool. So suppose, we needed another function now. We could just say scriptlets. Here's our scriptlet we just did, insert. And now we have another function. We'd obviously want to update the numbers. It's very important, otherwise it's going to jump to the wrong places. So now we've got a function 4. Like I said, I usually go ahead and indent. Makes it easier on the eyes. And now we have another function. Also be sure to change this, because we want to jump to the beginning of the right function. So now we have a new function. We can just add things, if we do another thing. So, you can really use this as just a framework of creating scripts. It's good for almost anything. I can give you another example. Let's see, here's one for Chrome that I did. Same deal. Downloads, installs, cleans up. So there are a variety of things that you can do with this, and the idea is just to create standardization and to make it much simpler to create these things, so that you don't just start with a blank piece of paper. There's already quite a bit of things there, and really all you need to know is technically what should happen and just apply a little bit of logic to it. Either checking afterwards for is a thing that should be true there, or is a thing that should now not be true still true. Like for instance, if the file does not exist, then go up. If the software is there, well then proceed forward and go to return from call. Skip that one line and go back up to the top. So the idea is just to make it much easier, because one thing I'm sure that many people that get Automate find when they first get it is that it's just this daunting thing that's shrouded in mystery, and the education is thorough, but maybe not practical at times, hard to understand. So that's why I've created this template. It makes for solid scripting, it makes for failure checking, it makes for good failure reporting, and the end result is that once you've gone through a little bit of testing and got it working, you have scripts that just work. They work, they don't fail very often, and when they do, you can zero right in on what happened. Now, speaking of testing, here's what I like to do. I actually have a Hyper-V server. You'll see that on this Hyper-V server, I got a couple of Windows 10s, a Windows 8, a Windows 7, a few different versions of server. And you don't have to have a robust Hyper-V server. They can be very base installs. They don't even all have to be running at the same time. And what I like to do is take a checkpoint before I start, and you can execute the script, see what's going on with it, and very easily just right-click, apply, and go right back to the state of the machine before you even ran the script, so you can very quickly try again. Now, if you don't want to do that and you're like, well, I've already downloaded the files, for instance, and I'm just troubleshooting and try to get the part that it actually installs working right, well, that's one of the beautiful things about having this very simple script track, is that you can just right-click and disable the first couple of functions, and then now when you launch the script, it's just going to pick up at function 3 and try that part, and you can work through it and figure out why it's failing, that sort of thing. So I really hope this helps. Just to recap, a couple things to look for. One, always make sure that this line is jumping to go to failure, otherwise you might get a loop. Always make sure that your if check, if it is, if you're checking to see if, for success, make sure that it's going to the appropriate direction afterwards. So that may mean that, if this thing exists, if this is a certain way, that's bad. We need to go back to function 1 begin. Or it may be, if this software is installed, that's a good thing. Jump over this go to function 2 begin and go to return from call, because we're good to go. Otherwise, keep moving forward, in which case the next step is to go back and try again. So there's really kind of 2 angles to come at it from, as far as checking to see if that thing just worked right. So that is more or less it. Down here in the failure section, you can do a couple things there. By default, I have create a ticket. I have a send an email. You can edit these, obviously change the email address to, from this to whatever your situation is. You can update the ticket to, the email here. You can add more info, whatever the case may be, and kind of make it your own. So sincerely hope that helps. If you feel like this was super amazing and you want to contribute towards me providing other stuff in the future, then fantastic. Otherwise, that's totally cool. I just really hope that it helps, and hopes that it takes a little bit of the mystery out of this process and makes things a bit simple for you. So on the blog post where this video is located, if you're just watching this on YouTube, then go over to Comprehensive MSP and click on blog and find this post, and you're going to see the accompanying link that will download the template, and then save it as a scriptlet. Maybe edit it a little bit first to go ahead and right out of the box update the email address and the specific proprietary info there. Save it as a scriptlet, and then you just got a quick launch to framework to work with, to throw functions and have it be very fault tolerant and solid. So if you have any questions, you have any problems, here's the website, Comprehensive MSP. You can shoot over an email to support at Comprehensive MSP. Obviously, in addition to just providing this stuff, provide services, Labtech management, ConnectWise consulting, automation, creation, things of that nature. So feel free to reach out.